Today we'll be covering Chapter 42, Ambulance Operations and Air Medical Response. We'll be using the Pre-Hospital Emergency Care, 11th edition, and this is brought to you by Southern Star Health Education. Introduction. An ambulance should be a place of comfort and support to patients. EMTs must be able to skillfully operate an ambulance. This chapter describes the elements of creating a culture of safety and how to operate an ambulance with safety in mind. Just culture, based on fairness and accountability, focus placed on the assessment of risks, coordinated support and resources, EMS safety and data systems, EMS education initiatives, EMS safety standards, and requirements for reporting and investigation. First step, assertive statement process, opening or attention getter. State your concern with the situation based on your analysis. State the problem. State the solution and obtain your partner's agreement. 5 factors for crew resource management essentials: communication, situation awareness, decision making, teamwork, and barriers. Effective use of crew resource management can reduce errors in patient care and better protect the safety of EMS personnel, patient, and the public. Driving the ambulance laws, regulations, and ordinances. This applies to the operation of an ambulance. Certain privileges are afforded to ambulance operators. It is never justified to operate an ambulance unsafely. You must meet all these conditions. You must have a valid driver's license. You must be responding to an emergency. You must use warning devices, emergency lights, horns, or sirens. You must exercise due regard for the safety of others, and many EMS systems provide additional guidances. Driving excellence, basics of good driving. Wear seatbelts, hold the steering wheel with both hands, practice with the vehicle you will drive, respond to weather and road conditions. Select the best route for safety travel, maintain a safe following distance, use headlights, and exercise caution when using warning devices. A number of factors can actually cause an operator to lose control of the ambulance. This could be weather, this could be external conditions, etc. Maintaining control, go the posted speed limit unless the situation is critical. Avoid sudden braking and minimize distractions. Realize other drivers may actually be distracted too. Higher speeds. Be careful or be especially careful on curves. Brake the proper speed before you enter a curve. Accelerate carefully and gradually. Exit from a curve slowly and steady. When driving down a long hill, use a lower gear. Always use smooth braking motions when it comes to driving. Aggressive drivers. Driving ambulance does not necessarily change the habits of other drivers. Aggressive drivers are often distracted. Using a police or other emergency vehicle escort en route to response or the hospital should be a last resort. Intersections and collisions. The most common collision in which an ambulance are involved are those at the intersections. Rainy weather or wet weather. An ambulance requires twice the stopping distance on wet pavement and 5 times as much on sleet or ice. Maintain a safe driving distance. Winter driving, carry emergency weather equipment, use snow wheels, monitor the temperatures. Wet ice and freezing rain occur between 28 degrees and 40 degrees. Avoid sudden movements in the steering wheel and sudden braking. When it comes to fog, mist, dust storms, and smog, slow down but avoid sudden decelerations. Watch how for traffic or watch for slow traffic ahead and behind. Turn on low beams and wipers. Use four-way flashers. Use defrosters. And when braking, pump brakes to flash the light so people can see. Driving at night, the risk of fatal collisions is higher at night. High beam headlights can cause temporary blindness. On high beams, the visibility will be 350 to 400 feet. At 55 miles per hour, it takes 4.5 seconds to cover 350 feet. For night driving, control speed so that the stopping range is within the headlight range. Take extra care when driving at night. Um, Headlights can actually blind you. Not only that, people sometimes don't drive with the lights on. Warning devices can also save time but have risks. Follow protocols for use of warning devices. Warning devices only request the right of way, they do not guarantee it. Exercise due guard when using warning devices. Colors and markings. Colors and markings provide the quick identification of ambulances and make them visible to the traffic. Colors and markings are typically designed to provide quick identification that the vehicle is an ambulance and to minimize visibility of traffic. Uh, there's uh, there's also a design that was brought into the ambulance years ago of a chevron, which is reflective, so they can see you when they're even if they don't have emergency lights on. Activate emergency lights during emergency calls. Use headlights even in daylight. Lights are placed at various locations on the ambulance for visibility. White lights are more visible than red and blue. Minimize light in fog and when parked. Siren noise is greatly reduced inside the vehicles. Do not startle drivers with sudden siren noise. Siren noise is stressful for patients. The siren can prevent hearing other emergency vehicles that might be coming your way. Using your air horn, consider using your air horn when there is a need to clear traffic quickly. Do not sound the air horn when close to other vehicles. Roadway incidents and scene safety. EMS personnel must set up the scene environment when working on or near a roadway. Poor visibility and impaired, distracted, and or inexperienced drivers are all factors in roadway incident injuries. High visibility apparel. EMTs and other rescuers personnel respond to the emergency on or near the roadway must wear approved high visibility apparel. EMTs must wear apparel that meets class 2 or 3 standards of ANSI or ICA 107-2004 or the public safety vest standards on the ANSI or ICEA 207-2006. Not trust approaching traffic. Do not turn your back on the traffic. Use the first arriving emergency vehicle to create a barrier between the traffic and the scene. Wear personal protective equipment and anti-high visible vests. At night, turn off vision impairing lights. use emergency vehicles to slow down or redirect traffic, use warning signs and traffic control measures upstream of the scene, use traffic cones to divert traffic, assign a person to monitor traffic, place vehicles uphill, upwind, when hazard materials may be involved. Phases of an ambulance call. The major phases are daily vehicle and equipment preparation, dispatch en route to the scene, at the scene, en route to receiving facility, at receiving facility, and en route to the station, and post-run. Daily pre-run preparations, ambulance maintenance. Basic ambulance maintenance includes oil and filter changes, transmission and differential checks, wheel bearing check, brake check, and tie rod and inspections. Know your service policies and procedures for reporting and correcting vehicle problems. The daily pre-run vehicle preparation, this includes checking the vehicle when ensuring all supplies and equipment are present and in working order. Items typically included in a daily ambulance inspection checklist: fuel, oil, fluid circulation system, batteries, brakes, tires and wheels, shoreline power and connectors, and headlights. Also look for brake lights, turn signals, emergency lights, wipers, horns, sirens, windows, door closing and latching devices, and power systems. Air conditioning, heating, and ventilation systems, radiator hose and fan belts, seat belts, dash lights, radios, supplies, and interior and exterior cleanliness. Tires for inflation, wear, or danger spots. Make sure all lights are functional. For all belts and hoses inside the engine compartment. Check all fluid levels and keep them up. Basic ambulance supplies, medical supplies. You have basic supplies, patient transfer equipment, airways, suction equipment, artificial positive pressure ventilation devices, oxygen inhalation equipment, automated external defibrillator, basic wounds care supplies, splinting supplies, childbirth supplies, and medications. Non-medical supplies, personal protective equipment for standard precautions, high visibility safety vest, and pre-planned routes. Comprehensive street maps also should. Dispatch. The phases of an ambulance. A message from the communication center will start the run. Ask the dispatcher to repeat any information that seems unclear. Write this information down so that you can refer to it. En route scenes, check vehicle exterior compartments, fasten your seatbelt, verify dispatch information, listen for status and updates, anticipate the equipment need, drive responsibly, determine crew member scenes duties, and request ALS backup if you deem it necessary. Notify dispatch of arrival. When you're at the scene, park in the most appropriate location, perform a 360-degree scene survey, put high visibility apparel, take standard precautions. It is safe to approach the patient. Determine the nature of the problem or mechanism of injury when you're dealing. Safety at the scene. Park in front or in back, and remember to use cones and warning devices to let traffic know that you're there. Park the EMS unit uphill and upwind from any leaking hazardous material. Phases of an ambulance call. At the scene, determine the number of patients, determine the priority of care. If need, gain access to the patient, provide treatment, move the patient to the ambulance, observe safety precautions. En route to the receiving facility, ensure the hazards have been controlled and ensure the patient is strapped to the cot. Ensure the patient is secure. Make sure that all the straps are on and the patient is comfortable. Change onboard oxygen to the, you might take a transportable oxygen cylinder to the scene, but when you get to the ambulance, you can go in and switch it off to the main oxygen source that you have inside the ambulance. Perform reassessment. Remember, in emergency situations or when you basically don't have control of the situation, you do it every 5 minutes. And when you are in control of the situation, you do it every 15 minutes. Document your history and other assessment findings. That's part of your communicate to medical direction and receiving medical facility of your findings and the estimated time of arrival, also known as ETA. Make the patient comfortable and reassure him. Notify dispatch when you are en route and when you have arrived at the receiving medical facility. Receiving facility, transfer patient care with all records, personal belongings, and an oral report. Assist in moving the patient, exchange linen and equipment that may be left with the patient, and complete the patient's care report. Put all equipment in its proper place, clean it before and then put it back in place. To the station and response area before leaving the hospital, clean, inspect, and restock ambulance. Wash your hands, notify your dispatch, refuel if needed, and return to station. PostRun. Fill out your file and file any reports as required by local protocol. After each run, check fuel, replace what you've used during the run, clean and disinfect non-disposable equipment that was used, and change soiled uniform. Make up the wheel stretcher and lock it in place for the next run. Complete an inventory equipment and supplies, replace necessary equipment so that the ambulance is fully stocked. Clean and disinfect the patient's compartment. And in post-run, infection control procedures, dispose of sharps, wash your hands, clean, disinfect, and sterilize contaminated equipment. Winter requires air medical transport. Operational guidelines. Patient transport to a distant facility, prolonged extrication for a high priority. Air transport will save time over ground transport in a time-critical patient. The patient is in remote area. Ground ambulance transport is blocked. Specialty medical skills, supplies, and other equipment are available in air transport. Medical guidelines to use air medical transports: acute stroke, head injury with altered mental status and signs of herniation, chest or abdominal trauma with signs of respiratory distress or shock, serious mechanisms of injury with unstable assessment or vital signs, and unstable patients with penetrating injury. Request air medical transport, basically give your name, department's name, callback number, nature of the incident, exact location of the incident, your radio frequency, and exact location of the loading zone and hazards that might be around. Additional considerations for air medical transport: weather and environmental limitations, altitude limitations, airspeed limitations, aircraft cabin size, terrain, cost, and patient preparation. Guidelines for setting up the landing zone. Clear all obstructions, flat, free of debris, and 150 from collision vehicles. Minimum 60 to 60 feet for day, 100 by 100 for night. If highway stop traffic both ways, consider the wind direction, mark each corner of the landing area, and fifth warning lights devices on the uphill side. Always crouch when approaching and leaving the helicopter. Never go to the tail rotor, and maintain rotor blades may dip as low as 4 feet off the ground, causing you to basically get injured. On approaching the helicopter from a downhill direction, approach from the same side and never approach from the upper portion of the hill. Security and safety. Operational security measures. There are recommended guidelines to avoid use of emergency vehicles in terrorist attacks and reduce the risk of theft. Personnel conduct a security briefing each shift. EMS crews should be informed and allowed to participate in developmental and security measures. Operational measures. All vehicles must be tracked at all times. EMS vehicles should not be left running or unattended with the keys in the vehicle. No access by unauthorized personnel, keeping a key log. Security measures to be followed during repairs. All markings must be destroyed when the vehicle is sold or salvaged, and warning devices must be. Uniform and identification, security and safety. Safeguard identification cards and patches from unauthorized personnel. ID cards and badges should be resistant to counterfeiting. Uniform stores must verify the ID of a person buying uniforms and ID or identification items. Carbon monoxide in ambulances make the carbon monoxide may actually come from the vehicle's external exhaust, equipment powered by gasoline or fuel, exhaust of vehicles parked next to a traveling in the ambulance, greater outside air pressure, which forces a CO into the ambulance itself, both the driver cabin and the back cabin. Prevent carbon monoxide poisoning, have frequent engine tune-ups, have an adequate exhaust system, keep rear windows shut, mark, make sure that the doors shut tightly, covering any openings in the outside. Do not or don't use exhaust fans or static vents, and keep the heater or AC on. Lesson summary. Ambulances crash, kills, and severely injure many EMTs, patients, and others. EMTs must obey all laws and regulations when operating an ambulance and must exercise due regard. EMTs have a specific responsibility during each phase of the ambulance call. EMTs must take special steps in preparing to interact with an air medical transport crew. Safety and security issues with ambulances include safeguard against improper use of ambulances and preventing carbon monoxide exposure.